Nick Saban's quarterback approach. How would you sum up Alabama's offense, by the way? If someone were to ask you just his entire career, describe the Alabama offense, I don't really know what you would say. It's a big week for Alabama because they landed five-star quarterback Ty Simpson. That happened on Friday, so that was after the Thursday show. So we haven't really discussed him, and I'm not going to do a breakdown of Ty Simpson tonight. I'm going to do it within the greater context of this fascinating piece that our buddy, good friend of the program, Aaron Suttles, who covers Alabama about as well as anyone in the country, by the way, for The Athletic, put out the other day. And in just a couple of minutes, Jesse's going to throw up some graphics that are they're really like a drop kick of recruiting nostalgia to the face. Even if you're not an Alabama fan, if you just follow recruiting, you're going to remember some of these names. And if you don't follow recruiting, you're going to look at the list of names and you're going to say, who are these people? Who are you people? They're Alabama quarterbacks. So it wasn't always this way, is my point. You look at the death machine that Alabama is now. You guys remember, unless you're 10 years old, you remember what it was like when he first got to Alabama. So again, Aaron Suttles puts together this little piece in The Athletic. It wasn't little, it was a nice sized piece, but it was in The Athletic after Ty Simpson commits. Ty Simpson, five-star quarterback, he commits to Alabama. And so Jesse, let's go ahead and cue him up now. So Suttles puts in there about how the quarterback recruiting and development has evolved, and he puts a list of guys that have committed. These are Alabama quarterback signees under Nick Saban. For those of you listening on the podcast, let me just read all these names. This is from 2007 to 2015. Nick Fanuzzi never started a game. Star Jackson never started a game. You remember A.J. McCarron. Remember Philip Sims, five-star quarterback out of Virginia, never started a game. Blake Sims didn't even commit as a quarterback and ended up winning an SEC championship. Philip Eli, remember him? No, you do not. Alec Morris, remember him? No, you do not. Cooper Bateman started one game against Ole Miss. That was it for him. Parker McLeod, you don't remember him. David Cornwell, you don't remember him. Blake Barnett, you do remember him. He also started one game, and then he was replaced by one Jalen Hurts. So if you're watching on YouTube, look at this nice, neat graphic that Jesse has up right now. And then I want to roll it, Jesse, to the next graphic. So that was 2007 to 2015. Well, then we get to 2015. To present day. And we see guys like Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, and then there are two names that really you probably don't remember. You remember baby Tua, Talia Tagovailoa. He was there under special circumstances. I think we all understand that. But Lane Hatcher, you don't remember that name. Paul Tyson is on campus currently. Four-star guy. Bryce Young, probably the starter this fall. I think a lot more is going to be made of that quarterback, quote-unquote, race than actually will exist. I'll put that out there in late February, by the way. Bryce Young's the starting quarterback there this fall, barring injury. Bryce Young there. Jalen Milroe is a stud, true freshman that they've got on campus. Ty Simpson will be next year, a stud, true freshman they'll have on campus. Do you notice a little uptick? Did you notice a little change in the caliber of quarterback there? So that was really interesting. And so then we draw it back to present day. What do we even make of all this? Like, if you didn't know anything, if you were a brand new college football fan, let's say, and you're watching Alabama, you watch the national championship game, you know they're really good, but I mean, what do we really know? Here's what's fascinating, always has been fascinating about Saban and Alabama. The people who continue to evolve, even when they're on top of their respective industries, are few and far between. They're like unicorns walking amongst us. They breathe the same air, they put on their pants the same way, but yet they don't function the way that normal people do. And what Nick Saban's done at Alabama is essentially they've never not been on top of the sport. Ever since basically 2009 and beyond, they've never not been on top. But even having said that, it's like Saban was a captain of a ship. He's out in the open ocean in the middle of the Pacific, and he's captaining one of those big container ships. And then he decides, I don't want to lose any speed. I don't want to take on a drop of water, but I want to turn this big container cargo ship into an aircraft carrier. Get to work. And then they did it. You're not supposed to be able to do that. I don't know how well versed you guys are in maritime construction. You're not supposed to be able to do that. You got to take her into port. You got to take on a little water. You got to tear her down to the hull and you got to rebuild her. That's not what Alabama did. They went from winning with Greg McElroy to winning with Tua Tagovailoa, and they stayed on top of the sport the entire time. Figure that out. Well, recruiting has a lot to do with it. A transcendently great coach has a lot to do with it. But this was the hidden hope for a lot of teams once upon a time. As I said, they won a title in 2009. They were on the border. They were on the precipice in 2008. They won the title in 2009. They won it again in 11 and 12. But do you remember back then, even as they were winning 3 in a 4-year stretch, you remember secretly what you thought. You thought to yourself, if my team has a good quarterback, like an elite quarterback, or if my team has a quarterback like Steven Garcia, who's really good, but he has an elite Saturday afternoon, we can beat Alabama. And that was kind of the ray of hope that you took into playing Alabama, because you knew they were going to play still by necessity low margin for error, high execution level football. They couldn't afford a ton of mistakes because they played ground and pound, ball control, play action type offense, and they got by with serviceable quarterback play. That was when people always threw around that game manager moniker. Well, that was this hidden hope. You know, if you get a Johnny Manziel performance, if you get a Nick Marshall performance, if you get the aforementioned Steven Garcia, like Bo Wallace, those kinds of quarterback performances, they could beat Alabama. And it was by design, obviously. It wasn't that Nick Saban hadn't figured anything out, but to him, he reasoned in his mind when he got to Alabama, I can build a roster that's so physically superior to the rest of this sport that I view it as a potential detriment to rely so heavily on quarterback. He would, for instance, look at how the Big 12 was doing things, and he said, if that quarterback goes down, that team goes down. I'm going to build my teams where we have excellent decision-making at quarterback, but we distribute the ball. And we win playing solid defense, and we just run over people. We bludgeon them to death. Well, then the sport slowly starts to evolve. So Saban can no longer afford to look at his quarterback position and say, I'm not going to rely on quarterback all that much, because that to me is just a vulnerability. And if one guy goes down, you're telling me my entire machine doesn't work anymore? I'm not going to build a team that way. Well, then he starts to evolve. And then he starts to prioritize not only the quarterback that they're going to get in there. They always wanted great quarterback play. They always wanted elite traits in a quarterback. He changed his philosophy on how offense was going to work there. That's what changed. And that took, if you want to know about lack of parity right now, my buddy Parker over at Stats of War covers TCU very well. I mean, like really uncomfortably well on Twitter. He asked the other day, what is the biggest thing that has sucked the parity out of the room of college football the last 20 years? Well, the answer is two words. One of them's Nick, and the other one's Saban. But really what happened is that day he looked at you and said, is this what you want college football to be? That's the day that he really took your hope away. Because up until that point, you could outdo them at quarterback. No one's doing it anymore. No one's really doing it anymore. Or if you beat them, you're not going to beat them because of average quarterback play and you just had a career day against them. If you beat them, you're probably going to end up having to beat them 55-48 or something like that. So all these guys now, let me tell you about the first world problems, by the way, that they have at Alabama. So right now, you've seen this at a couple of places. As you look at the points per game, this is absurd. It looks like a typo. We're showing you on the YouTube feed the average points per game for Bama from 2007 to 2020. Once upon a time, it was right around 27 points per game. This last year, they averaged 48.5, and to be honest with you, that was with the starters off the field for the vast majority of second halves. So again, just absurd. And I know the overall arc of offensive football is such that every team has probably seen an increase from 2007 to 2020 in points per game. Have they nearly doubled their offensive output like Alabama has? I probably think that's still what we would call a statistical anomaly. But back to the first world problems they got at Bama. Don't waste your time on this. If you're thinking about this, don't waste your time. You're looking at Bryce Young right now, and you're trying to figure it out. We got Bryce Young. Okay, let's see. He's going to start this year, and then he'll start next year. But then Ty Simpson will be on campus next year. So is he going to get mad that he can't start? And all the while, Jalen Milrose over here, like another former Jalen from the state of Texas that got overlooked, maybe he's the one that's going to end up shining. How do we keep all these guys on campus? Answer, you don't. Follow up to the answer, don't worry about it. When is Alabama ever going to hurt again to get a quarterback, either via the transfer route or the high school route? They're not. They're going to be able to replenish that pipeline every year. These are beyond first world problems, worrying about how you're going to keep all your 4- and 5-star quarterback talent on campus. You're not. No one is. Not just Alabama. No one is. But how about that list, man? No, we get to talk about Philip Eli and Star Jackson in the same sentence and breath as Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones. What a time to be alive, especially if you're an Alabama fan.